The Sims 4 has been around for a really long time. It was first released on September 2nd, 2014 for PC, so it's almost 12 years old now. However, when it was first released, it was missing a surprising number of core features, most of which had already existed in previous games at launch, making The Sims 4 feel more like a beta than a finished sequel. And over the years, they have added most of these features back into the game through free updates, but some of them took months, years, or even more than a decade to finally make it in. Hello everyone! Long time no see, this is Abi aka Onlyabidoang. Yes, I started using Facecam since 48 videos ago, and today I'm going to show you 20 base game features that weren't a part of The Sims 4 at launch in 2014. So without further ado, let's see what Sims 4 was missing back then. First of all, let's talk about the most infamous one, toddlers. Remember this? Yep, this is what The Sims 4 looked like before toddlers existed. Babies would grow up straight to children. That's right, toddlers weren't part of the game at launch, which was one of the biggest controversies surrounding The Sims 4. It wasn't until 2.5 years later, on January 12, 2017, that toddlers finally made their return as a free base game update. From then on, babies would age up into toddlers and then to children. Well, at least until infants were added in 2023. Toddlers came with 8 traits to choose from, could walk right from the start unlike in previous games, and had 5 unique skills along with plenty of new activities and gameplay. Next up are infants, another life stage that wasn't a part of the game at launch. They were added on March 14, 2023, around 8.5 years after The Sims 4 was released. The developers knew that newborn babies were heavily criticized by the community for basically being objects rather than a fully playable life stage. However, instead of revamping babies, they decided to create an entirely new life stage while keeping newborns as they were. Infants were introduced as the stage between newborns and toddlers. They came with 6 traits to choose from, could crawl around, eat their first solid foods in high chairs, and could still be breastfed or given milk like newborns. They could also sleep in cribs. Compared to toddlers, infants are much more demanding and fussy. They don't have traditional skills unless you own the Growing Together expansion pack, which adds infants milestones and a deeper development system. Before toddlers and infants were introduced, nannies weren't actually part of The Sims 4 at launch either. Honestly, there wasn't much need for them at the time since the only life stage that needed constant care was newborns, and they would immediately age up into children anyway. If you left a baby alone, the only option was daycare, where they would simply disappear into rabbit hole daycare until you return. That changed on July 14, 2016, when nannies were finally added to the game 2 years later. If taking care of your little Sims becoming too difficult, or you need to leave them alone while your Sims go to work, you can hire a nanny to look after them, take care of their needs, and even help them build skills. Nannies can also take care of children, even though children are old enough to be left home alone anyways. Next up are pools. Pools were also not part of The Sims 4's release, and their removal was one of the most infamous changes from previous games. It wasn't until 2 months later, on November 4th, 2014, that pools were finally added back into the game through a free update. The update introduced not only pools themselves, but also swimwear, pool ladders, pool lights, pool decals, and the return of death by drowning. Then, almost 10 years later, on July 23, 2024, the game introduced curved pools in a base game update, which include 3 different curved round sizes to choose from. And yes, you can actually place pool ladders and have Sims sit on these curves. Next up are ghosts. Ghosts were added to The Sims 4 on October 1st, 2014, a month after the game's release. Before that, when a Sim died, they will simply leave behind an urn or tombstone. There were no actual ghosts roaming around. After this update, ghosts could emerge from the urns or tombstones, usually at night. If you befriended one, you could even add them to your household and play as them. Ghosts could also possess objects, have some unique social interactions, and depending on how a Sim died, they could have unique appearances and abilities. Then, on October 22, 2024, Ghosts got another major update. You can now create ghosts directly in Create a Sim, and when your Sim dies, you immediately get the option to continue playing as a ghost instead of having to wait for them to appear and befriend them first. Ghosts also got their own renamed needs, along with more unique abilities based on their causes of death, including deaths by fire and starvation. Previously, all lots in The Sims 4 were completely flat, with no elevation or depressions in the terrain because, well, there was no terrain manipulation tool in the game. However, on November 13th, 2018, 4 years after the game's release, a base game update finally introduced terrain manipulation. You can now raise and lower terrain, smooth it out, flatten it to a certain height, or reset all terrain manipulation. You can also customize the terrain brush by changing its shape between a square and a circle, as well as adjusting its size, softness, and speed while modifying the terrain. Still somewhat related to terrain manipulation, the water tool was also nowhere to be found in The Sims 4 at launch. At the time, we only had fountain tools and these small ponds found in certain areas of the world, which were basically just objects that Sims could fish in. However, the water tool finally made its return on July 20th, 2021, almost 7 years after the game's release, as part of a base game update. With this tool, you can create your own custom pond by digging a hole using the terrain tool and then filling it with water. You can also adjust the water to different heights to create deeper or shallower ponds. The update also introduced various pond objects and special effects, including fish, insects, ducks, and even crocodiles. There are also new interactions, such as playing in the water and looking for frogs. And if you want your custom pond to function as a fishing spot, you can add a pond fishing allowed sign, which lets Sim catch fish that you've already discovered in the pond. This one you've probably already heard about since it's still pretty recent, and that's burglars. Yeah, it's pretty strange that this iconic NPC didn't make it into The Sims 4 at launch, and we had to wait almost 11 years for them to finally arrive in the base game update on February 25th, 2025. Before this, the closest thing we had to a break-in was vampire break-ins from the Vampires game pack, and even that is pretty rare. Anyway, after the update, there's now a chance for a burglar to break into your home at night and start stealing your stuff. If you notice them in time, you can confront them yourself, fight them, or call the police to deal with them. You can also install a burglar alarm, which was introduced in the same update. It can scare burglars away, or you can upgrade it to automatically call the police or even zap the burglar. And that's not all. There are actually plenty of other ways to scare burglars away, especially if you own some of the other packs. Next up is the repair service. Before this was added, if an object broke, you had two options: replace it entirely or try to fix it yourself. And that second option could literally result in your death if you tried to repair an electronic appliance with a low handiness skill. Thankfully, this changed with the base game update on November 3rd, 2015, about a year after the game's release. You could finally hire a repair service to come fix your broken objects. Once you contact them, the repair person arrives at your house almost immediately and fixes all the broken objects on the lot for a fee. And considering that hiring them is usually much cheaper than completely replacing a broken object, it's definitely worth using if your sim isn't particularly handy. In The Sims 4's original release, we also didn't have a family tree feature at all. That changed with the base game update on February 3rd, 2015, when family trees finally made their return. You could now see the family connections between Sims, including their parents, children, siblings, grandparents, and grandchildren, along with deceased family members. And 11 years later, on February 3rd, 2026, the family tree received another major improvement. It now includes new relationship labels such as in-laws, half-siblings, great-grandparents, distant relatives, and even ancestors and descendants. The family tree also got an updated layout, allowing you to see more extended family members at once and making it much easier to trace your Sims' increasingly complicated family connections. Before going further, just want to remind you that if you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to this channel. It really helps out a lot. Oh, and one quick announcement for my Indonesian viewers. I now have another gaming channel where I mainly play games in Indonesian called Onlyabidoang. There's not much on there just yet, but I'm working on more videos, so feel free to check it out if you're interested. Okay, moving on. At launch, there was also a strange absence of two iconic careers, the business and athletic careers. These had been staple careers in the base game ever since The Sims 1, so their absence from The Sims 4 was pretty surprising. Thankfully, they finally made their return on December 16, 2014, around 3 months after the game's release. Like most careers in The Sims 4, they're basically rabbit hole careers, meaning your Sims disappears from the lot when they go to work and then comes back when it's over. The update also introduced their career outfits, unique reward objects, and exclusive career rooms that you can unlock as your Sim progresses through each career. I also want to mention this other change from the game's release. Previously, the world map looked incredibly bland, with no colors for the worlds at all, only white and blue. And yes, even newer worlds like New Crest and Magnolia Promenade had the same boring white and blue look. this was already the nail in the coffin, especially when you compare it to previous games where the worlds were fully 3D and you could actually look around them. So yeah, the world map was definitely a downgrade. That finally changed with an update on December 4th, 2015, when the remaining world maps were given their own colors instead of just being white on blue. And from that point onward, all new worlds introduced into the game came with their own unique colors on the world map. There were also no firefighters in The Sims 4 at launch. The fire alarm was already in the game, but it didn't actually do much. It would ring and warn everyone in the house about the fire, and that's basically it. The only thing that could actually put out a fire was the fire sprinkler. That finally changed on June 3rd, 2020, almost 6 years after the game's release. You could now call the firefighters whenever a fire broke out, and the fire alarm would automatically summon them instead of just ringing and warning everyone. There was one catch though, there was no fire truck this time. The firefighters would simply appear out of thin air in front of your house just like any other NPC, and then proceed to extinguish all the fires on the lot. Once everything is safe, they will simply leave the lot. They will even do a little celebratory dance for some reason, which can happen rarely. The repossession service was also absent from The Sims 4 at launch, which is pretty strange considering they had been a staple in the base game of every previous Sims sequel. Before this was added, if you didn't pay your bills in The Sims 4, your electricity and water will simply get shut off, and that's basically it. No repo person, no objects being taken away. However, since June 3rd, 2020, if you continue to ignore your bills, the repo person will actually show up and start taking objects from your lot to help pay off your debts. Oh, and fun fact, the repo person actually made an appearance earlier in 2019 with the Discover University expansion pack. They would only show up to repossess your objects if you failed to pay off your student loans, but they didn't officially become a base game feature until a year later. Next up, dishwashers. Yes, even dishwashers weren't present in The Sims 4 at launch. Before they were added, your sim could only wash their dishes in the sink. But almost a year later, on August 26, 2015, dishwashers were finally introduced to the game. They're pretty much instant, although they can be quite loud. And just like sinks, you can also drag and drop dirty dishes directly into the dishwasher to clean them up. And since they're electronic appliances, there's also a chance your sim could get electrocuted while trying to repair one. I also want to talk about the skin tones in The Sims 4. When the game first released, we only had 18 skin tones to choose from. Then, on February 6, 2018, they added 10 new natural skin tones with warmer and cooler undertones. But even then, the selection was still pretty limited, especially compared to The Sims 3 with its flexible slider approach to skin tones. After a huge uproar from players over the lack of skin tone diversity, The Sims team finally released a massive skin tone overhaul on December 7, 2020. This added tons of new warm, neutral, and cool variations, as well as sliders that allowed us to customize them even further. After this is story progression, aka neighborhood stories. Before this feature was introduced, unless you have mods like MC Command Center, non-played Sims would basically just age up and eventually die of old age without much changing in their lives. They would remain exactly where they were unless you actively played them yourself. That started to change with the neighborhood stories feature, which was introduced in two major updates. The first part arrived on November 30th, 2021. However, it was pretty limited and didn't happen completely passively. You had to either influence other Sims to make certain life decisions, or get advice from your friends and then make those changes yourself. Then, on March 15th, 2022, neighborhood stories became much more autonomous. Non-played Sims could now make major life changes on their own, such as getting jobs, getting married, making friends, having children, adopting pets, dying in accidental death, and much more. You can get updates about these changes in the neighborhood by clicking on the mailbox. You can also customize which neighborhood stories changes are allowed for different households through Manage Worlds, so you can decide how much autonomy your Sims neighbors have. Let's talk about telescopes. Before this was added, the only way to stargaze was by using this huge observatory. Yeah, there were no small backyard telescopes in The Sims 4 until June 14, 2022. The telescope works similarly to the observatory. You can use it to increase your logic skill or even your mischief skill if you use it to spy on other Sims. The only downside is that you can't use the telescope to get the Space Prince collectibles. You will still need the observatory for those. But unlike the giant observatory, telescopes are small and portable, so you can easily place them in your backyard or take them wherever you want. Just be careful though, using a telescope can also trigger a meteorite falling on your sim, killing them. So maybe be careful and don't stare at the sky for too long. The kleptomaniac trait was also missing from the base game at launch. It wasn't added until February 4th, 2016. This trait allows Sims to steal objects from other residential or community lots as long as nobody is watching them. If they're successful, the stolen object goes into their inventory, although they have to wait for a cooldown before they can steal something again. The type and value of objects they can steal also depend on their mischief skill. The higher their skill, the more valuable and varied the objects they can swipe. And if a kleptomaniac hasn't stolen anything for a while, they might even get the urge to steal something autonomously. Kleptomaniac Sims can also choose to return objects they've stolen before, which gives them a positive mood for doing the right thing. And finally, the last feature I want to talk about is likes and dislikes, which were introduced on May 20th, 2021. In the base game, you can choose preferences for colors, music genres, and activities. The rest of these preferences categories you see here were added with different packs. These preferences can also change dynamically. Sometimes when your sim performs a certain activity, a notification will pop up asking whether they like it or dislike it. Liking certain activities can make your sim feel happier and increase their fun, while disliking them can make them stress and decrease their fun. The same applies to music. Listening to a genre your sim likes can make them happy, while listening to something they dislike can make them tense. Colors are a little different in the base game. They don't really have much of an effect beyond allowing sims to ask other sims about their favorite color. However, some packs can actually make use of this preference. For example, with Spa Day, your sim will be happier if they get a manicure in their favorite color. So those are 20 features that weren't part of the Sims 4 base game at launch. And yeah, there are tons of other features that could have made it into this list, but I think these are some of the most shocking ones, especially compared to the launch of previous Sims games. So what do you think of this list? Are there any other features that you think should have been on this list? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope that you like it, and if you do and want more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. See you later!